But is it a blockbuster or a dud? Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us, and thanks again for making Justice #1 in prime time last Saturday. And joining me now by phone, the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening.
Well, first of all, let me say that we are delighted to have you on Justice tonight. And there is so much breaking news now. The Democrat memo just came out. And, of course, you called the memo a legal bust on Twitter today, and you called Adam Schiff a phony. So what do you take exception to in the memo?
Well, all you do is you see this Adam Schiff. He has a meeting, and he leaves the meeting, and he calls up reporters, and then all of a sudden they have news, and you're not supposed to do that. It's probably illegal to do it. You know, he'll have a committee meeting, and he'll leak all sorts of information. You know, he's a bad guy. But it's certainly, the memo was a nothing. It confirmed, basically, if you look at it, it confirmed. I watched Ms. Hurd, who was fantastic, on your show just before, and I will tell you that was really just a confirmation of, if you call it the Republican memo or the Nunes memo, it's referred to as a lot of things, but that was nothing but a confirmation. And a lot of bad things happened on the other side, not on this side, but on the other side.
And you know what's interesting?
Somebody should look into it, because what they did is really fraudulent, and somebody should be looking into that. And by somebody, I'm talking about you-know-who.
I have a feeling I know who it is, Mr. President. Look, one of the things that I thought was interesting is here we've got the Democrat memo, and thank you for complimenting Catherine Herridge. She's right next to me. She'll be on in a moment. We love Catherine Herridge. But for
she's able to really take, you know, Jeanine, she's able to take a very complex document and very systematically, you know, essentially say the truth.
Well, she drills it down.
That document was really, it really verifies, and a lot of bad things in that document. That document really verifies the Nunes memo. And that's why they didn't push hard to have it. If you notice, they did not push it hard because they understood this was going to happen. And just in looking around and seeing reports, a lot of people are saying that. That's a very bad document for their side.
Well, in addition to that, Mr. President, you know, after 18 months, not any kind of reference to any collusion. But I have to tell you that Adam Schiff just tweeted.
By the way, that is true, Jeanine. You have all these committees. Everybody's looking. There is no collusion. No phone calls. I had no phone calls. No meetings. No nothing. There is no collusion. I say it all the time. Anybody that asks, there's no collusion. I was, you know, I don't want to sound braggadocious. I was a far better candidate. She was not a good candidate. She went to the wrong states. She didn't go to Michigan enough. She didn't go to Wisconsin at all. She didn't do a good job in North Carolina. She did a poor job in Ohio and a poor job in Pennsylvania. And you could also add Florida into the mix. And, you know, frankly, that's what it was all about. There was nothing to do with Russians.
Well, clearly, I mean, I think all the evidence points to that. But Adam Schiff has just seconds ago tweeted, wait a minute, Mr. President, am I a phony or sleazy, a monster or little? Surely you know the key to a good playground nickname is consistency. I thought you were supposed to be good at this. I guess you got him in the gut there. What do you say to that, Mr. President?
Well, I say sort of all of those. But look, he was just, we need intelligence that brings our nation together. And a lot of people are tearing our nation apart on this and other subjects. They're tearing our nation apart. And I have to tell you, every time the folks over in Moscow, the Russians, as he likes to call them, every time they watch, every time they see him and others get on and do what they did, he got scammed by somebody pretending to be a Russian. And your Senator Warner got scammed also. Now, it's okay for them to be dealing, but if we have any kind of a contact with anybody, even though it has nothing to do with anything important, it's a big deal. But if you look at Senator Warner, he got scammed. And if you look at Adam Schiff last week, 2 weeks ago, he got scammed by somebody. That was fine that he spoke to this person, thought he was a Russian, but it didn't work out that way. He wasn't a Russian. So we have to bring the country together, Jeanine, and what's happening is this and other things are ripping it apart, and it's been this way for a long time. This isn't just over the last year when I've been here. It was terrible during the Obama administration, and by the way, I have to say, Obama was the president during all of this meddling, or whatever you want to call it, with Russians and others possibly. But Obama was the president. He's the one that was supposed to take care of this. And he didn't. Nobody brings that up. He was warned, and he didn't, which makes it even worse. But he was the president during this period of time, during the entire period of time, and he did nothing about it. So somebody should bring it. Now, I have to say, a lot of the fair people and people, frankly, that love my administration, they bring it up all the time. But Obama was the president. He did nothing about it. With all of that being said, we have to come together as a nation. And we have to get it done. A lot of great things are happening. Our economy is incredible. I'm renegotiating trade deals. There are no trade deals ever negotiated. China, they became rich when they made the World Trade Deal, the World Trade Organization, WTO. We have to change it. We can't allow our workers, our country, our companies to be ripped off like this, and they understand that, and that's why they're starting to move back into the United States. Chrysler's coming back. Foxconn is coming in, the big company that makes the Apple, different things for Apple. Some of the biggest companies in the world, they're coming back into our country now because of what I'm doing. But we have to come together, Jeanine, as a nation. And we shouldn't be fighting like this. We should all be on the same team. That includes Adam Schiff.
Right.
We should all be on the same
Adam
team.
Schiff,
they shouldn't have two sides fighting all the time, fighting. We should all come together as a nation. With that being said, I have to just add one thing. Congressman Nunes, if this continues to go forward, I really think someday he's going to be greatly honored for his service and for what he's done. He's been very, very brave in the face of a lot of obstacles. What he's found out has been incredible. I give him tremendous credit. But I have to say this, we have to come together as a nation.
You know, Mr. President, your approval rating is soaring. And, you know, we can talk about the economy and the low unemployment and the stock market and all of the great things that have been happening with the economy. But you have accomplished all of this. And by the way, there's a poll that puts you at 50%. At CPAC, you're at 93% approval rating. You did all this in 1 year with the economy. To what do you attribute these incredible advances?
Well, I think that I've had a lot of good ideas and I have a lot of energy. I get things done. I mean, I'm very proud of what's happened with the economy. If they would have gone with in the other direction, they would not have gotten rid of regulations. I really believe that while the tax cuts are the biggest ever, there has been no bill like that passed, including Anwar and including getting rid of the individual mandate, which is the worst thing going on Obamacare. And health care is starting to really come along now well. You're going to see premiums start to drop. But with all of that being said, I think regulation, the cutting of regulations is what has given us this, because, you know, as you know, the tax cuts just happened a fairly short while ago. I've been cutting regulations now for over a year, substantially. Only unnecessary regulations, but you couldn't build, you couldn't do anything. Look at the pipelines. If you look at the Keystone Pipeline, if you look at the Dakota Access Pipeline, Jeanine, 48,000 jobs, they were dead. And I approved them right at the beginning of my administration. And environmentally superior, because you're underground as opposed to trucking and all of the things that you have to do to get the product to the various coasts and to where it's going, to the refineries. So, it's been an incredible period. And I was saying before, and somebody was very readily agreeing with me, I don't think any administration has done as much as we've done in the first year I don't think it's even close. Between the taxes, the regulations, Justice Gorsuch, many district judges, many Court of Appeals judges, and many more to go. We have great judges, literally just waiting. We have a tremendous problem with Senator Schumer where he's not approving people that are working in the administration. It's unprecedented. We have hundreds of people that have taken so long to get approved, and we have people still waiting to get approved in the trade groups, in very important groups, Jeanine. The Democrats, I mean, the one thing they're incredible at is obstruction. The one thing they're incredible at, they use it. They resist. And it's just bad for the country. So hopefully that can get done, and hopefully we can get DACA done. I'd like to do that for the Hispanics out there. I did very well with the Hispanics, much better than anyone would have thought. I'm the one that's pushing DACA, and the Democrats are nowhere to be found.
Well, what's amazing is that, they continue to try to promote their narrative. But I want to ask you about something you talked about at CPAC yesterday that was very well received, and that has to do with in the wake of the Parkland, Florida school shooting. And you talked about expanding background checks on guns.
Right.
How do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I think it is going to happen. I think we have tremendous support. Where the Republican Party has really come together. It's become very unified. You see that also with the poll. I think that was one of the straw poll questions that were asked, and at the CPAC, which was a tremendous conference, by the way, tremendously successful. And it was, about the whole thing, the party coming together. And it really is. It's really coming together. And I've spoken to many senators, many congressmen just today, yesterday, the day before. And I think we're going to have a great bill put forward very soon, having to do with background checks, having to do with getting rid of certain things and keeping other things, and perhaps we'll do something on age, because it doesn't seem to make sense that you have to wait till you're 21 years old to get a pistol. But to get a gun like this maniac used in the school, you get that at 18. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And frankly, I explained that to the NRA. They're great people. Wayne and Chris and all of the great patriots. These are great people. But I said, fellas, we have to get going on some really good legislation. So background checks are going to be very important. At the same time, there's no bigger champion for the Second Amendment than I am. I'm the champion of the Second Amendment.
I don't think there's any question about that.
We need protection. You have to have protection. You see what happened with the police officers that didn't have the guts to go into. I mean, now it turns out, I guess there's 4 of them.
4 of them.
Incredible.
That's my open tonight.
If we would have had some great teachers that were gun adept, meaning, really understood weaponry and guns, and if they had concealed permits, you wouldn't have this problem today. You just wouldn't have it. And, they have one other thing. They love those children, the teachers. They love those children. That coach who was so brave, who ran into gunfire to protect the kids, if he had his gun concealed, he'd be alive today. Most of the people would be a whole different story. But he would have been shooting instead of running into somebody totally unarmed who was a maniac. So, there's a lot of good things happening, Jeanine. We're going to get it solved. The one big thing to that also is when these crazy people who are cowards, when they hear or know that randomly you'll have maybe 20% of the teachers, 15% of the teachers inside having concealed, and these are experts at what we're talking about, they'll never go into the building. You're never going to have this problem. And, we have certain states that do this, and nobody talks about them. But it's been very successful. But he would never have run into the building if he thought that bullets were going to come flying back into him. In fact, he left the building pretending he was a student. He didn't want to get shot. If he thought there were people that could defend offensively, that you could, have some offensive power in there, he would have never, ever gone into that school building.
Right. Right. And, you know, the shame of it all, Mr. President, and I know that you have to go, but the idea of those with mental illnesses and psychiatric problems is something that we really have to deal with, because I think one of the common threads of all of these shooters is that they are, you know, mentally deficient, wackadoos, nuts, evil.
That's true.
Also.
Well, that would be a big part of the background checks. We would have a very, very hard section, and we would have a section on a very powerful section on mental illness. And somebody who is mentally ill should not have a weapon, should not have a gun. And that would be covered in the background checks. And I think the NRA is going to be for it. I think that a lot of people, I mean, this certainly should be bipartisan, but we're drawing up very strong legislation right now having to do with background checks, mental illness. We're going to have, I think you're going to have tremendous support. It's time. It's time. It's been many years. You know, I'm not here that long, in all fairness. You've had this going on for a long time. It's time to get it done and get it done right. But they have to know that they go into a school with bad intentions, there are big consequences.
Good.
It's not going to be like it was for this guy, where after he was finished, he walks out with the other students pretending he's a student and got away, except for one very great policeman that in a different town, fairly far away, he said, I think this is the guy they're looking for, and he nabbed him. Pretty good job. I mean, in all fairness, that man did a good job.
Well, there
but they
are
have
some
to know there are
unsung heroes.
consequences. They go into a school, you know, gun-free zone is just, that's like target practice for these guys. They see that, and that's what they want. It's very dangerous. Gun-free zones are very dangerous because the bad guys love gun-free zones, Jeanine.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you one more thing. You talked about adding $700 billion to the military, as I think you said yesterday it was going to hell, something like that. I know that you support the military and you're giving them the resources they need. Are we going to have a parade?
Well, I'd like to have a parade. A lot of the generals would like to have a parade to celebrate what we're doing. You know, our military was very depleted. It was going in the wrong direction. And I want to have, by far, the most powerful military in the world. I want it to be more powerful than we've for so many years, even beyond President Obama. I mean, it's been hurt for many, many years and depleted. We had sequester, which is a disaster. And I got $700 billion and $716 billion next year. That will rebuild our military. We'll have a tremendous updated, the top of the line. There'll be nothing like it. We needed that. But to get that, I was forced to give Democrats, you know, many billions of dollars for things that I would normally not have done. They had, you know, they don't care so much about the military, sadly. They don't care so much about people pouring across the border, MS-13. They're not worried about MS-13. If anything, they want to protect MS-13. And these are vicious people. By the way, these aren't people that use guns. These are people that like using knives because it's more painful. And we've gotten thousands of them, literally thousands, you know that, out of the country and put them in jail and out of the country. But we need the wall, we need border security, and we have to stop MS-13 and a lot of really bad people and drugs from pouring into our country. And you see the numbers. We've stopped. I mean, the numbers are way down from what they were. But that's not good enough. We can't. We have to stop them all. It's not good enough.
And
so
you're
we're going to have tremendous border security. That's part of what we want right now.
When are we getting the wall?
Well, we're going to get the wall. The Democrats have actually agreed to that, but I have to get more. We need other things. We need something to do with chain migration, something to do with visa lottery. I mean, we actually have lottery systems where you go to countries and they do lotteries for who comes into the United States. Now, you know they're not going to have their best people in a lottery because they're not going to put their best people in a lottery. They don't want to have their good people leave. So we get these people, and then you'll have, like, the incident we had on the West Side Highway,
in New York,
where this guy who comes in through chain migration and visa lottery runs over and kills 8 people. and badly injures. You know, nobody ever talks about all of the people, whether it's the school or on the West Side Highway, people that go out to put themselves in shape and they end up losing legs and arms. Nobody ever talks about the people that are so horribly hurt and injured. But this guy runs his truck into people, killed 8 people and injured many, and he came in through the system. Well, I don't want that. I want people to come in ultimately. We want people to come in through merit. And you know, we're going to need merit. We need people to come in to our country because we have so many companies now moving in because of the regulations and because of what we did with the massive tax cuts, which is great for the companies, and they're going to hire the people, that we're going to need people to take care of the companies. So, but we want people based on merit, not based on the fact that they're thrown into a bin. And many of those people are not the people you want in the country, believe me.
Well, clearly. And if we were to have a parade, I'm stuck on the parade. When do you think we can have this parade? Because I want to go to the parade.
Well, I guess we're talking about probably Veterans Day. It's just preliminarily, you know, being discussed. But we're talking about probably Veterans Day. I like July 4th because July 4th in Washington, D.C. would be beautiful. Yes. It would be up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. A lot of it would be flyovers. I was at the Bastille Day parade in France with the president of France, very good guy.
Oh, okay.
And it was quite something. And frankly, I think it's great for spirit. The military loves it. They love the idea. Would have our West Point and Annapolis and the Air Force Academy, Coast Guard Academy, and would have it would be a great representative parade. Would have a lot of plane flyovers. I think it would be something great for the spirit of the country. You know, we have a great country, and we should be celebrating our country. So we'll see if we can do it at a reasonable cost, and if we can't, we won't do it. But the generals would love to do it, I can tell you, and so would I. I think it's great for our country in terms of being a cheerleader and the spirit. It's very important. Hello?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Let me ask you finally, the mainstream media, they don't seem to be ending their attacks on you. And yet, as your approval rating is soaring and as you make all these accomplishments, do you think at some point they have to give in?
I think what they're going to do is 6 months before the election in 2020, they're going to all endorse me, and they're going to be so nice, because if they don't have me, their ratings are going to die, and they're all going to go out of business, okay? You know, they get good ratings because of whatever is going on. I mean, because of me. And I think what happens is I'm sure they'll all endorse. You know, I'm being a little sarcastic when I say that, but I expect them all to endorse me and cherish me right up until that point, and then probably after I win, they'll go after me again. But their ratings are good. I will say Fox ratings are phenomenal. CNN has not been doing well. Right. MSNBC is now in second place over CNN, but Fox is beating everybody. And you people have been very fair. Not good. You've been very fair to me. That's all I ask for is fairness. No, I call it fake news. There's so much fake news, Jeanine. It's just incredible.
It is. It is. And finally, Ivanka, have you heard from her?
I have. She's working hard. She's doing a great job. You know Ivanka very well. There is no better representative that we can have go over to a pretty tough place right now in the world. It's South Korea. She's over at the Olympics, and she's with the president of South Korea. And
right.
You have North Korea surrounding her, and it's a very interesting situation. So I have spoken to her. We cannot have a better, smarter representative.
Well, Mr. President, I can't thank you enough for calling into Justice. We are very honored that you did so. Congratulations on your approval ratings on CPAC and on all of the successes that you've had. My viewers are just thrilled that you came on to Justice. Thank you again.
Well, I love your viewers. I want to tell you do, and I do too. And congratulations on your success, because I did look at your ratings over the last couple of weeks, and you're doing fantastically. And,
thank you.
And so is our friend Waters, our Waters world, man. He's doing great also. And your whole Saturday Night Live, what you guys, Greg, what you guys have done is pretty amazing. But I did look at how well you're doing, and I want to congratulate you, Jeanine. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. We're honored. All right. Next, more on the developing story of the day, the Democrats' big reveal, or was it? Catherine Herridge and the Hill Executive Vice President John Solomon join me next to break down the Democrats' memo. Justice rolls on in a moment.
The United Nations Security Council taking a rare unified stance on the conflict in Syria. It unanimously approved a resolution demanding a 30-day ceasefire in Syria to occur, quote, without delay. The resolution did not include an explicit time frame. A proposed 3-day deadline was watered down to garner support from Russia, Syria's ally. Now, this comes after a week of airstrikes on rebel-held suburbs of Damascus, leaving hundreds of civilians dead. The NRA is in hot water following the recent Florida school shooting that left 17 students and teachers dead. A number of corporations are severing ties with the gun lobby group, including some major airlines and car rental agencies. The NRA responded today, calling it a, quote, shameful display of political and civic cowardice. I'm Robert Gray. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
Breaking tonight, the Democrats' counter memo on alleged government surveillance abuses has been released, and the fallout has just begun. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins me here in D.C. with the latest, along with investigative journalist and executive VP at the Hill, John Solomon. All right, good evening, guys. We don't have a lot of time, but Catherine, first of all, the president was very complimentary of you, and we all agree. But what's your takeaway from this memo?
Okay, so really the Democrats are asking folks to focus on the details and the trees and not the forest, the overall picture. One of the central findings in the Republican memo is that the fact the dossier was funded by the DNC and Clinton campaign was never shared with this surveillance court when they went and got a warrant for this Trump campaign aid. The Democrats don't take on that point directly in this memo. What they say is that the court was told that it was politically motivated, and they shielded the identities of the individuals because they say that's a common practice for them to protect sources and methods.
From a judge, that's a common practice? I've never heard of that.
Well, you raised an important point about the FISA court, which is an ex parte court, which means that there's a special responsibility on the government to provide as much visibility to the judges as possible. So folks at home will have to decide whether calling it a politically motivated document was appropriate or whether they should have gone that extra step to say it was the DNC and the Clinton campaign. Final point, if I could. So the Democrats say that elements of the Trump dossier were corroborated by multiple sources, and it's in this section of the memo. You can see it's heavily blacked out, so we don't know what it was exactly. However, I think there's a conflict here because Director Comey testified to the Senate Intelligence Committee last year that when he briefed the incoming president at Trump Tower in January of 2017, that the dossier at that time was still unverified and salacious. So this is 3 months after the application that the Democrats say.
So you swear to a court that this is reliable, and then you go to Congress and say it's not. Anyway, John Solomon with the Hill. You guys have been breaking unbelievable stuff on the Hill. What's your takeaway from this Democrat memo?
Yeah. I think Catherine has it right. You know, we were all, as reporters, looking forward to this, and it doesn't turn out to be a very evidentiary document. It turns out to be more of a political document, laying out an argument, but not putting a lot of new evidence. There's no new evidence of collusion. We still have no evidence in the public domain of collusion, right? There's no challenging to the fact that they withheld from the court the identity, the fact that the DNC and Clinton campaign paid for the primary evidence they used to surveil Carter Page. Here's another omission. We learned this just in the last couple of days. The FBI interviewed Carter Page in 2013. He voluntarily helped an investigation involving some Russians who were later convicted. And in 2015, they intercepted information saying that Carter Page, the Russians didn't find Carter Page, derogatory information where the Russians said they didn't think Carter Page was very useful to them. You would think they would tell that to the court if they're now asking them to surveil him in 2016, and they leave that out, just like they leave out the DNC and Clinton connections. I think when you look at all this, the FBI and the DOJ look a little bit like that 17-year-old son that sneaks out of your house Saturday night. He gets busted when he comes back, and Dad says, "What did you have to drink tonight?" And I said, "I had a Coca-Cola." You don't tell him you had 5 beers. They're leaving out really important information from the court.
The whole idea that Carter Page helped the FBI in 2013 is news to me.
Yeah,
is it news? I mean,
no, that's right. There was a counterintelligence investigation based in New York City, and Carter Page was one of the targets of these Russian spies. But Carter Page then agreed to become a cooperating witness, and his testimony was used to secure a prosecution and a conviction.
To assist the FBI.
That's correct.
And they didn't tell this to the court. Instead, they wanted to surveil him. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered about this. How thorough is the FBI and the DOJ in front of this court?
But the one thing that jumped out at me is they do say that after they got the surveillance warrant of Carter Page, there was additional intelligence that was gathered that was credible enough that allowed the surveillance court to renew the applications multiple times. And we don't know what that information is.
Because they haven't told us.
Well, it's blacked out. You can't really make an independent assessment. All
right. Catherine Herridge, John Solomon, I don't mean to rush, but thank you so much for being with us tonight. And our panel's ready to break down the interview with the president, plus the release of the memo has them primed for a fiery debate. Katrina Pearson and former Hillary Clinton advisor Richard Goodstein standing by. You can't miss this.
It doesn't seem to make sense that you have to wait till you're 21 years old to get a pistol, but to get a gun like this maniac used in the school, you get that at 18. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And frankly, I explained that to the NRA. They're great people. Wayne and Chris and all of the great patriots. These are great people. But I said, fellas, we have to get going on some really good legislation. So background checks are going to be very important.
You just heard President Trump minutes ago right here on Justice. And now my panel, former Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson, and former Clinton advisor, Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. All right, guys, you heard the president. What's your takeaway from it, Katrina?
I think the president, we are just so lucky to have President Trump today. We have a president who not only respects the Constitution, but wants to put forth common sense measures to keep children safe in our schools. He's committed to making America great again in every way, shape, possible. We've seen that in some of the things that he's done today. He gave an amazing speech at CPAC. He was well received. And I think just in the first part of your show, I mean, he talked about all of the great things that he's been doing and some of the wonderful things that he wants to do.
Richard, what did you think of the fact that the president is actually willing to take on the issue of background checks? He thinks that he'll get it through Congress. He's willing to deal with the problem of mental illness. I mean, kind of unusual.
I'd like to enter into another bet with you on this whole question, whether he's going to get this legislation done. Look, let's talk about mental health. Every country on the planet has mental health problems. No country other than this one has scenes like we saw at Parkland. None. Why? Because of the availability of guns. I mean, this is a big misdirection. Should crazy people be able to get guns? Of course not. But every other country on the globe has people with mental health problems, and none of them have what we had. And incidentally, as far as gun adept, Fort Hood people were 100% gun adept, not 20%.
But they had to leave their guns somewhere else.
The people at the Navy Yard? No.
Well, okay, since we want to talk about guns and that being the problem, which is not the problem in Parkland, there was a systemic failure at every level for that community. The University of Chicago put out a study in 2016. Time magazine called it the worst year ever for that city. And they wanted to find out why there were so many more gun violence and homicides, 58% more. And they couldn't figure it out. But you know, there was one little thing in this anomaly in that study from the University of Chicago. And it was a simple fact that mental health facilities had been consolidated from 12 to 6.
All right. They're not allowed to have guns in Chicago. More people are dying there. How do you explain that?
Because it's coming in from Indiana and Mississippi. The fact of the matter is, you know who's got tougher gun laws than Chicago? New York. Whereas you know, because you're a resident, the gun deaths are way down.
Gotta go, guys. I'm so sorry. Katrina Pearson, Richard Goodstein, I'm sorry. They're telling me we gotta go. And my opening statement is a little late, but it's next. And I speak exclusively with EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. He's here live next.